case in just over the years in the United States, both in the history books and ongoing, is that they have found a way, no matter what, without fail, in the United States, people are always ginned up in opposition of immigrants whenever there's economic downturn. Without fail, it always happens. And we are at the point now where we've seen such such a predictable, observable phenomenon. You know, Bo the Fifth Column talked about this a couple days ago. How this isn't new. This Trump didn't create this; he just used it.
Right.
And anti-Asian, anti-sex worker animosity. This is not new. This existed already, and it's not going to be new if it comes around for another group of people, for people from Latin America, Mexico, and the Caribbean. It's been Jewish people, it's been Irish people, it's been Italian people, it's been black people, okay, and it's been Asian people, and without fail, they will always find a way to try and shift the blame onto migrants and minorities. And so another big thing I would say to anybody listening is that is where talking does play a role. It is to hard and fast counter that when you hear it. Drown out that propaganda that you are hearing that is trying to shift the blame of the failures of our system of government of the people. The whole point of having a state, if we're going to have a state, then it should be a government of the people, and it should be working in service of the people. The reason I'm an anarchist is because, looking back through history, I have yet to see when the state actually did a damn thing for the people. So, at least consistently.
Right.
So I don't think we need a damn state.
I agree. Get rid of it.
If it's not going to work as intended, fucking get rid of it. I'm sorry if I use colorful language on your stream.
Oh,
I
you can
do
say fuck. I don't care.
apologize.
That's totally fine. Yeah. How do we change like the cultural undertones of just like hating immigrants in this country?
What we do, the best thing that we can do, I think, is to one of the best things that I can do is to make sure that people know to fight the real enemy, to make sure that we remind everybody who is actually the cause of the problems, what institutions are actually behind these issues, and we counter their lies with facts immediately and anytime we see it and hear it. And it needs to be, again, at the community level. This is why I always say around the holidays, I'm like, no. You need to be as insufferable as possible at Thanksgiving. Talk politics at the dinner table, call out that creepy uncle, eat and drink entirely too much, pass out flatulating and belching on the couch. But more importantly, make sure everybody leaves feeling very, very dissatisfied with the system. Like, hands down.
I had to listen at Christmas. I had to listen to my family talk about how Antifa is really scary and how like my aunt and uncle wouldn't go through Nashville because they were worried about Antifa and they had a bunch of guns in their car just in case.
Good Lord.
And my stepdad was like, "Oh, I would love to just be able to shoot one of them." And I was like, "Oh my God. Can I go home?"
And so the thing that I ask people to do in those situations, because I have friends who have families like that. I have family members who's on, through marriage, who they themselves have family members like that, I guess, in my in-laws side. And I just ask everybody to just stop for a moment. Just stop for a moment and think about why they feel that way, and ask themselves, why? Why is it scary? So if people have these narratives they're going off of, oh, it's scary, okay, they're burning down cities, and so I will pull out my phone and I'll be like, all right, well, let's go to Google Earth. I mean, okay, Minneapolis is still here. It's still
Portland's
there.
gone though. Portland's gone. They
Portland's
burned Portland
gone.
down.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it looks like Portland and Seattle are still there.
Oh, that's just probably some Bill Gates propaganda.
Maybe it's holograms from Jewish space lasers. I don't
Yes.
know,
Yes,
but
it's that.
um, and just I'm real quick. I'm talking with Soup, so I won't be talking to my chat as much. But hello, everybody in my chat. Pop up your other tab and go watch it on Soup's stream on Twitch if you're watching this on YouTube. Anyway, I was saying, I asked them. They're saying, "Oh, cities were burnt down." I'm like, no, maybe some buildings got caught up. Some of it might have been from right wing agitators, which were, definitely noted and verified as being on the ground as well. But 98% of the protests were peaceful, and almost all of the protests observed were rather peaceful, and the ones that weren't peaceful were a result of direct agitation from law enforcement, right?
Right. Every time the cops show up, it turns into a riot. It's
Yeah,
weird.
I led protests last summer. I went to one and I led one in
Wow.
my community, and I the one that I went to was a massive group that went downtown. Everything was peaceful. People were singing, people were chanting. Had a very long walk that about ground my feet to hamburger on the pavement, and made it intimately clear to me how out of shape I am. But everybody wore masks and socially distanced, and that's a good side point to talk to somebody about. Oh, hey, what can I do? What can I do to help? What can I do to help? You want to know something that really helped? I've told this story before. We were all down there. We were all getting ready at the park, sort of as a staging area, and I there was one lady that had like a Red Ryder wagon full of McDonald's hamburgers. And I'm just like, this is perfect. Like, most of these people
Yeah.
probably haven't even eaten yet, and we're going to be marching. And I'm like, you know what? Yeah, I'll take a burger. That was perfect.
Yeah.
There were people bringing water, traffic vests. One guy was walking around, sunscreen, sunscreen. You need sunscreen. One of the protests I led, a friend of
Just
mine is a
being a part of
therapist.
the community.
Yeah, a friend of mine is a counselor, and they wore a sandwich board that said, "I am a counselor. Talk to me." You know, and
That's
and
good.
and so if people experienced anything triggering, that person was there to talk them through it. That is, you use what you know, use what you have. I've said before in other streams, like whatever you are, whatever your um, demographic is, however old or young, if you're watching this stream, then you're old enough and able enough to do something, right? So even if you are disabled, maybe you can't walk in a protest, you can monitor using free police scanner apps. You can monitor and relay police communications, right? For organizing. If you have a space like in your home, you can offer a gathering point for demonstrators or anti-fascist actors, depending on the nature of events in your areas. Are you a skateboarder? Who knows the streets better than you? If you're a skateboarder, you know those streets better than anyone else in the world. You know the people that need help on those streets. You know the places you can hide on those streets. You know all the different routes on those streets. Same if you're a bicyclist. These are all things you can do, right? So that's what we're all about. Any type of help, as people have said in your chat, we will take any type of help.
Thank you, Carl Narks, for the follow. I really appreciate that.
Yes.
Yeah, I like I like how like what you're describing is like just being like a good person. Like just being somebody who cares like about the people that live around them. Like I asked like my kid if she needs sunscreen, like because I care about her,
Yes.
and I feel like our society has just like sucked the living like the what's the word?
Well,
Uh
there's a lot of missing compassion and empathy in our
yes, that like
society.
it's like sucked it out of us. I'm having a hard time speaking today, it seems
Well,
like.
and the problem, I don't like that charity is a thing that was co-opted by the wealthy. Okay, charity. I was raised a Christian. I'm an atheist now, but even back then, we were taught that charity was something personal between you and your immediate peers. Okay, that you did what you were able to do. So even something like charity, if you're not going as far as like mutual aid when it comes to large groups and demographics, that's something personal that you can take upon yourself. Charity, hospitality, empathy, these are things that you can do to help people. Moreover, that is part of the framework of anarchic praxis and anarchy. A lot of the people, because anarchy has become such a scare word, they think it just means chaos. No, it really
Right.
just means a removal of those hierarchies that are pushing us down in society. So when you take those hierarchies away, and if we delve a little bit into the theoretical framework of anarchy, you're doing a dual power structure. And a large part of that is mutual aid and direct action. And the reason why I like anarchists a lot even more, and I have nothing against communists, but I like anarchists because they literally will see a problem that needs to be solved, or they'll see a situation that needs to be rectified, and they'll just do it. Like, hey, is there a lot of people hungry or struggling to eat? Okay, we're going to just set up an unlicensed kitchen and start cooking food. You can Google that. They're called punk kitchens. They're very popular in Europe for a while. German anarchists literally started the squatter movement of Berlin back some decades ago. Those were anarchists that started that, right? They basically just said, hey, here's an empty building and we have a bunch of people that need shelter. Fuck the certificates and the permits. Here, shelter. Here
We
is
live here
shelter.
now. Here's the shelter.
We give you shelter.
Because it's common sense. Like it just makes sense.
Yes, it makes
Who
sense.
Ode was saying that he was like, anarchy goes back so long because it's just what we naturally do anyways.
Yes.
Like as humans.
I got a question from chat directed at you.
Oh.
They said don't answer if you don't want to. But the question was, aren't you with the USU DSA? Soup.
Oh, yes.
Ah, awesome.
Yes. Hello. Yeah. I'm the I like do the mutual aid stuff.
Oh,
And yeah. So I contact local organizations in the area and try and get our group able to volunteer with them. We've done work for. There's this lab on campus that makes like products for for those with disabilities, and we worked on these trikes for kids with disabilities. These families would get these like kits where they would build the trikes themselves, and I like made the parts for it or helped make the parts for it and stuff. It was pretty cool. I got to use one of those metal saw things, which was pretty
nice.
neat.
For
So
some reason, I keep hitting people from the Wyoming area, and I'm not sure why. I think it's because I did a charity stream for the Socialist Rifle Association
mm,
chapter out there to fund their personal first aid kits for anti-fascist actors on the streets. That was a very good fundraising campaign. My only gripe is I wish I could have done something bigger for at the national level that would benefit all the chapters and maybe make a little bit more money, but in the future perhaps.
yeah.
The person who asked that question, Ludlow, will you just go to her Twitch please and watch, and then you can respond there. Apparently they're also originally from Cache Valley.
Oh, okay. Okay,
Is
cool.
it Cache Valley or Cache Valley?
Cash.
I feel like it's
Cash.
supposed to be Cache. It's just
I
we've Americanized it to hell and back.
I would like to say cachet. Oh.
It's it's I lived in California for a bit, and I noticed that California, formerly a Spanish territory, a lot of the roads down there have Spanish names of famous Spanish people, right? And yet they don't say them right. But we'll look at now. I studied some Spanish in school. Now, when I moved out there, said them the way they were supposed to be pronounced if I was saying them in a Spanish tone and language. Like there's a road called Sepulveda Avenue, and I would say that, and people would look at me funny. It's Sepulveda, and
Sepulveda.
I'm like, no, it's a Spanish name. It's Sepulveda. And I'm like, no, everybody calls it Sepulveda. And there's another one called La Ciénaga or La Ciénaga, and they're like, it's Ciénaga. And I'm like,
Cienega.
no, it's La Ciénaga. It's La Ciénaga. And I'm like, Jesus Christ. You
There's
think
this
the
one.
wrong correction is the proper one.
There's this one place in Tennessee called Lafayette, like Lafayetteville, but it looks like Lafayette. And so like it because it's French. And so some people from out of town will go, "Do you know where Lafayette is?" And most people are like, "No." But
That happens.
Lafayetteville is down that way.
That happens out here too, because like I'm next to Indiana, I'm in Ohio, and a lot of parts of southeastern Indiana were named after European cities and countries. So there's, as the natives here would call it, Versailles, Indiana.
Versailles.
Versailles. Now you got to drive up to Versailles. I'm like, Versailles? It's Versailles. What do you mean Versailles?
Versailles.
It's ridiculous. It really is. And just because it's gotten so, I don't even want to say Anglicized, because I'm pretty sure Anglo speakers like in the UK would say it right.
Right, that's probably true.
Brandon, that was very spicy, that what you just typed.
Oh,
Sorry.
what did he type? What would he type?
Loves watching our streams. It's the best part of their day to come and watch their stream. I'm not reading that. Brandon, I'm not reading that. While they will say use a marital aid. We'll just say that.
Okay. Yeah. So you mentioned guns, and as a leftist, I feel like that's a spicy topic, right? Because there's a lot of leftists that really, really want stronger gun legislation, particularly after the events in California. It was California, right?
Which events? What events are we talking about?
The most recent shooting.
The
Asian
massage parlor? Atlanta.
Yeah. Atlanta. Okay.
Yeah. So here's the thing. I would say guns are a topic of discussion, but I guess I'm kind of insulated in my little echo chamber, and that most of the leftists I interact with are fairly pro-gun. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, I literally did charity streams for the Socialist Rifle Association. I'm also a big proponent of left-leaning rifle orgs to sort of decolonize gun culture and pull it back from the white supremacists and the hardcore neoconservative audience. So it's fun watching the NRA get their shit kicked in New York. I applaud it and watch it while eating popcorn. But we... So, what is your political alignment, Soop?
Mine, I guess ideally I'm like an anarcho-communist.
Okay, so you're at least somewhat familiar with Marx. Marx himself even said that rifles are necessary for revolution, and any efforts to disarm the workers should be frustrated by force if necessary. I'm kind of quoting. And so I do believe that I'm a firm supporter of owning guns. It's one of the few things I think is a good intention of the American Constitution and the amendments. The fact of the matter is, I just don't subscribe to the same ideology of gun culture, the same, let's be honest, incoherent ideology of right-wing gun culture, because right-wingers will say, hey, pro-Second Amendment, pro-gun culture, pro-guns, right? And they'll say it's to defend against a tyrannical government, but they all support cops and military. I'm like, who do you think is going to come for your guns? Do you think Beto O'Rourke himself is going to show up at your door to take your guns? Do you think that tyrannical government is going to be carried out by Trump himself or by Biden himself or by Kamala herself? No. They're going to send cops and soldiers. And in the case of the Pacific Northwest this past summer, masked, badgeless DHS agents, but basically federal soldiers and cops. That's who's going to come. So the Second Amendment doesn't exist for law-abiding gun owners. It exists for gun owners to stop being law-abiding citizens when the time comes, right? We're not doing that to abide the law. So I think um, here's what I will say. I can understand someone's lack of comfort around guns. America has a very, very, very serious problem with mental health resources. We have a very, very sad, troubling, and horrifying level of gun involved suicides in the United States. I do not like that. But ultimately, I think the means of self-defense, especially for minorities, going back to my Afrocentric focus, is something that has to be available. And I do not want to see anything that would interrupt those efforts to arm and train minorities for self-defense. And so a lot of the gun control propositions, even by well-meaning people, and I do think it is well-meaning, won't work for one simple reason in the United States. We can talk, and this is why you don't hear me engage in the rhetoric talking about other countries and their gun control. The cat's out of the bag, okay? No other countries have more guns than people. The
Right.
UK doesn't have more guns than people. We do. Australia doesn't have more guns than people. We do. Okay. Until you find some kind of way to address that, and I do not think it's physically possible, your problem is going to be very, 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 very hard to solve, right? I hope that makes sense, because I think gun solving the gun issue and the issue of shootings in America is more a problem that can't be legislated away. I truly believe. I think that is what you could call a cultural problem. If I don't like to use terms like that, but I think it's a philosophy problem. It's a cultural problem. We have to get away from the idea that the gun makes the man. We have to get away from the idea that it is the final solution to go to when all other solutions have been exhausted. We have to get people away from the belief that they are left without options. All right. So now, listen, the gentleman that killed those people in Atlanta, I don't know if his situation was just a matter of he didn't watch the right YouTube videos, and I don't really care to proselytize to people like him. But what I can do is continue to make the world a better place around him so that his ideas and the grifters that will push those ideas onto him become obsolete. He can look around at the world that's changing for the better around him, look around at workplaces becoming democratized. He can look around and see a more equitable and fair living for everybody around him. He can look around and see more healthcare and mental health care being made freely available to everyone. And so when you have actual dyed-in-the-wool fascists and white supremacists speaking to him, it will clash. It will have, he won't see it as making sense anymore. He'll say, hey, this doesn't make sense. Like, these left-leaning people are actually doing some good stuff. And that's kind of my take on anything when it comes to reaching out to those on the right, to kind of cover that subject as well.
Right. Yeah, and I think you bring up an interesting point when you talk about minorities and gun rights, because I often hear, and I know other people do, when it comes to police shootings, well, that person was armed, they had a gun, and it's like, well, yeah, this is a Second Amendment country. Like, we're a gun country.
Yeah.
And I feel like they only say that when the victim that the cop has killed or tried to kill is black. Like, or Hispanic or some or person of color, and not, they don't say that when it's a white person.
It's
Um,
commonly used when it is victims of color of police sponsored or state sponsored murder against people. And like perfect example, In my state is where Tamir Rice was killed, right? That was in Cleveland, Ohio. And let's just take it all at face value. About 2 seconds after his police cruiser rolled to a stop, he already had that boy laying on the ground bleeding out for holding a toy gun in what I remind you is an open carry state. This is an open carry state. So can he say the presence of holding a toy gun in his hand is an exact reason to take lethal force without even getting out of his car when he has a state that he operates in as a law enforcement officer, as a peace officer, that people can openly carry guns on their hip and on their back? That not gonna use any insulting language. We'll just say that person I disagree with, Caitlin Bennett, that gun girl photo she took at her graduation was at Kent State. That was here in Ohio, right? So you know, they will always make an excuse. There will
Right.
always, always, always be an excuse. To this day, as I read news articles or I look at comments, as George Floyd's trial is going on, they will come up with any excuse possible for any of the people. And by the way, 1,500 Americans were killed by police last year in 2020. Insanity. And people will always make excuses for it. People will say they had a gun. They had a gun, and it does happen to white victims too. I've had some of them shared with me. And my thing is maybe, just maybe, just maybe, we can ask ourselves instead, is it the problem with the police? Maybe they shouldn't be the ones there escalating that situation to where you have two parties believing that that is their only way out. That's what I want people to take away from it, you know?
Yeah, it's hard to get people to stop idolizing the police. Um, and like when I explain to people, when I fully explain like defund the police, oftentimes they say things, well, I agree with that when you phrase it like that. And there, I just, I don't know. I feel like, particularly with the right, as those who claim to be like against the status quo for some reason, they're like the biggest cop lovers. Like if they make sure to get 4 to 6 servings of boot every day
Oh
for
yeah, they don't know what it
a
means to
balanced
be.
diet, it seems.
Yeah, they don't know what it means to be anti-establishment. They think that they are anti-establishment when it turns out they actually wholeheartedly support the state. They just want the state to be present in their lives in a way that they like.
It's just
Um,
it's funny because like they're conservatives. Your whole ideology is to conserve what is currently the thing. Like it's just, it's like they don't think. They got
they
brain
they
worms.
want the state to preserve hegemony. That's exactly what
Right.
they want. They think they're anti-establishment when they're really just they're anti-progress by way of establishment. So they don't want the
Right.
establishment to have any role in progress. But it's very easy for them to defend the state. They never stop and think to themselves, with all of their paraphernalia, about singing the praises of American imperialism and troops and soldiers, that they're supporting an American empire. They're supporting the state. They're saying the praises of the state. When they're complaining about a football player kneeling during an anthem, or complaining about a team of female basketball players kneeling during an anthem, they're like, "Oh, I didn't know you liked nationalism that much." And sports, honestly, a better I've been trying to work on a script for a while, but I'm pretty sure better YouTubers than me could probably say it better. The tool that sports have been as a tool of nationalism for many years across many nations,
Yeah.
and that's a
The
Hitler playbook.
Olympics.
That's literally a Hitler playbook move. I don't understand why people um, forget about that. That
Right.
he saw his athletes as a means of selling the world on the power of his nation and the glory of his nation, and as well as the citizens. Everybody was expected to fall into line. Sports were a major tool of nationalism. I would think people would be a little more aware of that. As someone said in your chat, yeah. After they shot Tamir Rice, they tackled his 14-year-old sister, who was understandably distraught that her 11-year-old brother was gunned down by the cops.
But
So
I can't imagine.
it turns out
I
cops are
can't.
really good at tackling children. Right here in Cincinnati, just a few years back, an off-duty cop who was working security at a grocery store tased a 13-year-old girl for stealing a bag of chips.
I've seen a video of a cop body slamming a middle schooler for taking an extra milk.
Yeah.
Like, what?
And so that was something I talked about as well. We talk about there was the shooting in Parkland at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, and I think David Hogue is ultimately doing some good work. A lot of the black voices from that school and movement were drowned out because there were black student activists there as well who didn't really get put in the mainstream, and they had a lot more poignant and cutting dialogue regarding the role of police in the school, specifically that school resource officer who failed to take any action against the active shooter. But it's funny when you look at that guy's history, he's tackled students in the school before. So he has the means, black students, mind you, he has the means to tackle black students, but he can't stop a white active shooter, right?
Right.
But he can tackle black students over minor offenses and things like that. So, yeah, it's get the cops out of schools, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Yes. Let's. We need to totally rework our entire education system.
Hey, what's up, Ike?
How are you doing, friend? Yeah, so you bring up a good point with when you mention that these other activists who happen to be people of color were drowned out by David Hogue. So at this rally that I went to, and I've talked about this a few different times on my channel, but one of the things that one of the speakers said that has really stuck with me, that I seem to be trying to ask everybody I can, like, what they think about this. And what they said was they were talking about white allyship, and it was, you need to be willing to sacrifice your privilege.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
that is something that, like, I can't really stop thinking about. Like, it's something that that really, really did stick with me. And so I wanted to ask you, like, what do you think that means? Like, how can somebody do that?
Okay, so I do not like. I like to think that maybe agree, maybe disagree. I like to think that the content I make and the wording that I use, I try to be very down to earth. What little bit of efforts I've put into branding and whatnot in my content, I like. I show people my interest. I like bourbon and cigars and guns, and I love my dogs. And but ultimately, we're people. All right, we're people. The majority of people have very simple wants, desires, and needs. They want to live. They want to protect their families. They want to protect their communities, and they want to survive. So, I think the majority of white people do not actively weaponize their privilege. I would say the majority of white people might be a bit ignorant or colorblind to their privilege. That being said, I don't like using terms telling people to shed their privilege, right, or get rid of their privilege, and I don't like people to telling people, oh, come to terms with your white fragility. Prostrate yourself, get your flog, and start just beating yourself. No, that's not what I'm about. Because first of all, you can't really shed all of the privilege.
Right.
We're
kind of stuck with it. It's not my fault that I have privilege, but I just need to be aware of it, because
yes.
being aware of it makes me more, I think, compassionate and considerate of other people.
And there's ways to There's ways to weaponize it for good. And so there's certain things that you can't shed. Yeah. I, I didn't want to assume. Do you identify as female? I didn't want to assume your gender.
Oh,
You she
yeah, I identify
pronouns.
as, yes,
Okay.
female, woman.
I'm
She, her.
learning. I'm learning. I'm in my 30s. I was raised in a different time, and so I slip
Same.
up.
It's okay. Totally fine.
um. So okay, I am a black man. I am 6'6". I weigh 350 pounds. I can't undo that, right? Okay. You are seemingly a Caucasian woman. That is something you can't do, right? But what you can do, you can weaponize that for good. Just as much as you could weaponize it if you were knowledgeable of it, you could weaponize it for bad. You can also weaponize it for good. There's some great videos online that show you this. You are far less likely to catch a nightstick to the side of the head if you're standing in front of me while I am speaking to a group of people. And I'm not literally saying throw yourself on the sword, but my point is that people, depending on the audience, are willing to listen to, if it's a white voice speaking to white ears, they're willing to listen a bit more. Use that. Say, hey, fellow white people, let's talk about this, and hear where this is coming from. I am a firm believer of speaking to people where they are, and unfortunately a lot of people where they are, they might not be ready to hear these things coming from me. So that's why I try to tell everybody who listens to me and everybody in my audience, you have your peers, you have your community, you're the person who's able to communicate with those individuals. See what happens when it comes from you. So I'm not going to tell people to shed their privilege, because a lot of it you can't. But what I will tell people is use it to be an accomplice, not an ally. To use it to weaponize it for good, and use it to further the movement once you become aware of its presence. Hopefully that was not too long of an answer to a simple question.
No, no, I think that was just fine. um, yeah, you have a lot of good takes.
Oh,
Do
thank
you
you.
just think about them a lot?
Um, no, what happens is that I can just, well, yeah, I've thought, past tense, about them a lot. And I guess I do think about them from time to time, but ultimately, you could say my bread pilling or radicalization was a long, slow burn in the making, having spent a long time working in the hellhole of entry level corporate America jobs, and tangling with my efforts to pursue higher education and just all of that crap, and dealing with some of the nastier elements that capitalism can wrought upon someone. And then watching over and over and over and over the way the system exacts violence on black bodies that they can't control. And so it becomes very obvious, at least to me, partially due to my upbringing, that what needs to be done. Um, People have talked about the talk, that black parents have. I wasn't, my parents, they're not the people who were big chest thumping cop supporters, but they did say it was not necessarily a respect for the cops, it was a reverence and fear. Okay. They say, eyes forward, hands at 10 and 2, do what they say, end the interaction as soon as possible so that you live to go home. And so
Right,
some people don't, a lot of white people don't have that experience
right,
of a traffic stop. Again, I am, as one of your users said, just an absolute beefcake. And so naturally people feel a little bit intimidated when I'm around. I mean, I'm like to think I'm a fairly nice guy, and I even work in management, so I'm used to talking to teams of diverse people. But
right,
at the same time, I have a very deep voice, I have coarse facial hair, and I tower over most people. So I understand that people are a little bit on edge when I'm talking to them. So then, uh, I've been reading about this for years, right? There's like this Black Hulk myth in the head of cops. For some reason, Cops believe that black men just are moments away from tapping into some primordial rage that will give them the strength and power to shrug off bullets and overpower them. And so they have to immediately exact lethal force or extreme brutality upon us to keep us from doing that. I'm like, no, guys, I'm very soft. I bleed. Okay. I may have some competency in hand-to-hand combat because I worked as a bouncer for years, but I'm no more man than anyone else. So, but I've seen it. I've dealt with it. I've dealt with it with superiors in corporate workplaces. And so this is all, a lot of this plays into, if I don't know if you've read much W.E.B. Du Bois, um, he talked about a double consciousness. And that double consciousness is basically being your normal consciousness. You are a conscious, aware human, right? You are a sentient human, but the other consciousness is that you are a black man moving through a white world. And that never, ever goes away. I like to tell people that social anxiety is not something I have too much trouble with, and the sad truth is because I've spent my life being a giant sore thumb, so I'm just used to it. Um, hopefully that sheds some light on it.
Right. Ike says cops believe black people are all the Hulk.
Right? They think if we get angry, we're just going to morph into a monster and steal their women and beat them down, and that's not the case. The fact of the matter is, black bodies are disproportionately brutalized by police, and that's something I ultimately want to stop. And I don't know, maybe we can just abolish the police while we're at it.
Right. Yeah. What is what is your answer to the crime question when it comes to anarchy? Like, how do we deal with crime?
Well, first of all, somewhere between 50 to 60% of what we call crime shouldn't be. So, controlled substances usage or possession of controlled substances should not be a crime, so let's just knock those off the board. Any crimes built to pad the coffers of cities via citations are used at the discretion of cops to exact legal action against people of color and control their bodies. Let's get rid of those too. So jaywalking, parking violations, all of those. We need to get rid of those. Loitering. What kind of bullshit crime is loitering? I'm sorry. I thought this was America. I thought I could stand where I wanted.
No, you can't because you're black. You see, the problem is that you're standing in black, and we can't have that because it's scary.
Yeah. And so decriminalization is a big thing for me. Sex work, as someone in your chat mentioned, let's go ahead and decriminalize that in its entirety as well. Yes. Let's also, a huge help right off the bat will be basically decriminalization of anything that doesn't have a victim. I'm of the belief, no victim, no crime, right? No victim, no crime. So if you have that mindset going into it, no victim, no crime, then that already allows you to view everything from a whole different framework. Now, a lot of people have trouble grasping that, but if you sit and explain it to them, it starts to make a little bit of sense after a while. You just say, no victim, no crime. If I steal from you, you are a victim of theft. Okay, that's something we can at least talk about. I don't necessarily think that petty theft should be a crime, because I think if petty theft is occurring at any significant rate, then you have a systemic issue failing to address material conditions, yada, 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 yada. But if I steal from you, okay, you're a victim of crime. If I strike you, you're a victim of me attacking you, right? So that means there's a victim. But if I use a substance, the only victim's me, which isn't really a substance because you can't be the victim and perpetrator, right? So there's no victim, right? Walking across the street, there's no victim, right? Standing on the wrong street corner doesn't have a victim. Basically, decriminalized sex work, where we actually protect and enable sex workers to protect themselves has no
Yeah.
victim. Okay, we're talking about a consensual
They, they,
exchange.
they, yeah, they actually provide a legitimate service.
Oldest profession.
Sexual contact is a legitimate human need for most people. Obviously there are those who, are asexual and on that side of the sexuality spectrum, but for a lot of people it's really important to them.
Right. So, how would I deal with the crime? I believe if you took away the concept of policing as we have it now and you break down defense to a community level, really a community level, the people who investigate things that happen, the people who take action on things that happen, if necessary, are the same people in that community, that level of accountability, I think you will see that crime go down a great deal. But this has to be coupled with meeting the material needs. You want to see a reduction in crime, you have to remove any motive for crime, okay?
Right. We can't just get rid of the police and then not address the poverty and the hunger and the lack of shelter in the country.
And the sad truth is, people don't get it. It doesn't click with them. But if you fed, clothed, sheltered, and provided medicine to people, you would watch crime drop
Oh,
overnight
yeah.
from coast
Even
to
while
coast.
legalizing drugs.
Yes, you would watch crime drop coast to coast, and you wouldn't even have to get rid of the police. So then, once you take that step, then you can say, okay, now let's talk about policing. What does it mean to be policing? Should we have something like proactive policing? Because we've seen over the years, provably so, demonstrably so, empirically so, that if you put law enforcement in an area, they will find crimes. Because of the way our legal system is set up, we've made so many victimless things a crime. Again, not waiting on the light to change at a crosswalk is something they can cite you for. So if you put police there, you will find some victimless thing that they can call a crime, and then they can use that to control the bodies of minorities and poor people. They can use that to intern them, to put them into bondage, or to exact violence against them on behalf of the state. And that's what I want to stop as an anarchist. I would much rather prefer to never see another police cruiser go down my street, but instead see somebody who lives 2 streets over, maybe wearing a safety vest, walking down the sidewalk, that I know, that I talk to, that also has to live in that community, because they're going to have a vested interest in improving the material conditions of people in that community, not necessarily just enacting some lofty philosophical goal of law and order. Hopefully that
Right.
sheds light on my views on crime and policing.
Right. Base
Abolish
car
the
and all that.
police. Abolish the police. Abolish prisons.
Yeah, I feel like shit, I lost my thought. I was going to say something, but I forgot. Ruby says, I agree that you can't be the victim and perpetrator. I'm worried that's not quite a universal opinion. How do we get people to that side?
Well, the question that I would ask you is, let's do a thought experiment, right? Someone believes that you can be the victim and the perpetrator. How would you try that in court? Who's the defendant and who's the accused? So the only option in that case would be the state versus you, the perpetrator, on behalf of you, the victim. Does that sound like that makes a lot of sense?
Soft Baby Carrot asks, what would we do with violent criminals?
What would we do with violent criminals? I believe that we can quarantine people and examine what is the cause of this violence. The majority of violence, first of all, a lot of the violence that takes place is either domestic or domestic adjacent. Aside from that, it's war and drugs related. So we're going to knock off a lot of violence by decriminalizing drugs right off the bat. When you decriminalize it, people don't have to use criminal means to enforce a black market industry. Yeah, I would like corrections to actually be the goal. Corrections and treatment,
Right.
not internment and bondage,
Right.
right?
Right.
Um, Here's what I would ask you. If somebody is truly so predisposed to antisocial activity that they cannot help but take violence against other individuals, then can I really hold that person responsible for their actions in that case? I think some form of quarantine could be useful. Mental health, someone mentioned resocialization, but I think people who are intrinsically or inherently violent are such a small portion of the populace. Listen, it gains a lot of notoriety and news when there's active shooters, but the fact of the matter is they are, in truth, a minuscule part of gun violence in America. The majority of gun
Yeah.
violence in America is perpetuated by the owner of the gun against themselves. So that's the overwhelming majority of it. 3/4 of the gun deaths in America are from the gun owner using it on themselves. Yes, in my chat, someone mentioned Non-Compete has a great video on anarchist police and military work, and if that, if they would ever get our collab uploaded, I made a video with them about a post-police world as well. They just haven't uploaded it yet.
Damn collabs.
I know it's hard.
It's those uploads, man. Oh, I feel you. I've been writing a script for like, I don't know, maybe a month or two on propaganda, and it's just, well, we'll get done when we get done,
Hey, we'll
you
get
know.
there when we get there, you know?
Yes, I want it to be good.
But
Yeah,
no, this is fun. I like your chat asking questions.
oh yeah, they're pretty good at asking questions. They're nosy.
You have a good chat. I like the people in your chat. I see a couple recognizable names. I'm trying to get people in my chat to go and join yours to catch your streams in the future. Thank you,
Cool.
Craig's.
Thank
Craig's
you.
linked the video. Yeah, watch that video. Non-competes, a cool individual. I definitely owe them a trip to Vietnam, to have some beers with them and Luna.
Oh, a trip to Vietnam, just so casually.
Hey, listen, you have to you
Like
have
we're
to
not
talk
in a
about it.
pandemic. Like we're not in a pandemic.
You have to talk about it to make it happen, or else it'll never
That's
happen.
true. That's true. Um, do you think Joe Biden has done enough?
I don't think any president's done enough. I don't even think there should be presidents. So,
Right.
no.
That's fair. Wait, I thought Obama was like the end of racism,
Ah,
right? Didn't
Obama,
that happen with Obama?
motherfucker owes me $300. No, I've said before, I was younger then. I felt good when Obama was president. He was very good at making you and everybody feel good about being Americans enough to ignore all the shit going on underneath. But ultimately, he was just another in a long line of presidents that at best curtailed some of the absolute worst extremes of society while protecting that hegemony and defending neoliberal capitalism as well as American imperialism. A big one on the American imperialism, with the amount of people that he buried in the Middle East. So, nah. Don't like Obama.
That's fair. Hi, waxing. Um, yeah, Obama's frustrating for me because I was in high school and Obama was president for the majority of his years. I graduated, oh, I guess only for 2 of his years. Never mind. But I was largely apolitical then, so I didn't really know much about what Obama did until much later. And I feel like it's just kind of sad because it makes it really hard to trust anybody who does have a similar message of no, I'm going to bring, this change that we've all needed and that we've all wanted, and I'm here to talk about these things, and then they turn out to just be a spoonful of neoliberal corporatism.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. It's honestly his failures were part of what led to such a hard right shift in the country. And so I don't like the concept of presidents because this is what they do. But
Right.
ultimately, right now, I can see the writing on the wall. And I really hope that the party stalwarts and President Biden and all the establishment Democrats learn from what's happened for like the last 30, 40 years and do not screw it up. Because if they fuck this up, they are
It,
going to lose Congress
yeah,
and they
I'm
are
very
going to
worried about
lose
the.
the White House.
I'm pretty worried about the 2022 elections. I'm
And
not
you
gonna
want to know
lie.
the saddest truth?
Because all they have to do is good policy. Like, all they have to do is just pass policy for the fucking working class, and they can't do it. They can't do it.
They could, honestly, it's so sad. They could quite literally buy their victories right now if they just paid people, just gave cash to people struggling during an economic downturn. They would buy their way to wins. And
Right.
I don't know any other easy way to gain victory. They're up to their eyeballs in donors and lobbyists. Literally, just give people money. That's how
I
you all operate behind the scenes. Do that with your voters. Do that with the American people and buy the goddamn victory. Jesus Christ. It's so easy.
I know, and they're just totally fucking it up. It's so frustrating. Like, like, because it's like, this is my party. This is my party. And it's so, and I wish that they weren't my party. I wish that I wish that the Green Party was super viable, but it's not. We don't work in that system.
Yeah,
I wish.
I wish the Green Party was viable. I will say this: I like to think of myself as a realist to everyone listening. So just keep this in mind as well. As long as electoral college exists and we don't have an interstate compact or ranked choice, more than two parties is never happening. So
Right.
just understand that, everybody. This is why I talk past electoralism quite a bit. By the way, to answer, somebody asked a question here. Now, maybe they asked because they didn't know the word I was saying. But soft baby carrot. Hegemony is like the expectation of political dominance or leadership of a certain entity or institution. It's basically a tradition of dominance or leadership. So when I talk about defending hegemony, Obama basically preserved the American empire and American imperialism's hegemony over world politics and over the lives of everybody in America. Sorry, wanted to answer that.
Yeah. She says thank you, facepalm. What is a neoliberal?
Neoliberal. Okay, so neoliberalism basically takes the concepts of liberalism from a classical sense, a ideology based around private property rights, self-determinism or self-determination and personal freedoms in theory on paper. The neo comes in where it leans on a heavy amount of state intervention in terms of like national defense as well as intervention with the capitalist model. It's the best way I could soft stroke it. If we're talking about neoliberalism, it's heavily market oriented, and it leans towards capitalistic reform policies with a heavy slant towards deregulation. So heavy slant towards deregulation. You will see that was not only was that one of Trump's big selling points going into office, that was one of the things parroted to me a lot by Trump supporters, usually older senior citizens that I argued with in real life, is it's going to be great. He's going to save our markets and our economy. He's already stripped like 40 regulations. I'm like, wait, didn't one of those like control how much pork shit could be in our pork meat? Like, didn't we need that? And wasn't
I
another
know.
one about like literally
I'll,
stopping people from dumping waste into our rivers?
I'm a libertarian. I hate all regulations. My favorite, I love it when I talk about things like Medicare for all and like using the money that we put into the war machine to pay for it. And they're like, "Well, I don't want to pay taxes anyways." And I'm like, "Okay, well, you're going to literally always pay taxes while you're alive."
Yeah, they're
So,
so fucking
like we are
flaky and
nowhere near
wishy-washy.
not paying taxes.
They-
So, that's not an argument.
They're so fucking flaky. Like, okay, I thought in my last job, one of my colleagues there was a
Oh.
retired cop and lover of Fox News. He was so excited when Bill O'Reilly left and Tucker got the prime time. So yeah, I know. But he saw the events on the 6th, and that struck a chord for him. I thought I could get through to him, even if it was his somewhat nationalistic leanings, because he watched those guys walking through the room where, you know, people we revere as heroes have been laid in state. That's like a very, very serious desecration of what you could call an American cultural touchstone there when they were walking through the Capitol like that. You know, cops have a big thing with the Capitol. A lot of police departments take tours and vacations as guests, honored guests, to the United States Capitol. They have a thing called Cop Week out there, literally, where they host cops from all over the country out there. And
Do they give away like bacon tastings?
that would be hilarious if they did. Maybe they do, but and these guys literally do things like volunteer to stand guard at the cop memorial in D.C. on different shifts because it's like lit up and stuff for Cop Week, and they were given tours of the Capitol Police Station and all that stuff. And he was watching what happened on the 6th, and he said these guys are traitors. They're stomping all over a room where heroes have been laid in state. I'm like, yeah, these people are shitty, aren't they? You want to talk about that? And I'm like, you voted for Trump. How do you feel about this? He's like, no. He's like, I'm done. He's like, I didn't want this. I didn't ask for this. And I'm like, yeah, let's talk about it. And
My
he says, but the problem is, I was talking to him about this, and I said, so let's be clear. There's other ways we can do things, man. We spend so much goddamn money on all these other things when we could just be helping people. This guy
yeah.
wasn't an idiot, so he didn't think it was Antifa. Thank God. He's not.
Oh,
He's not
my
Alex Jones
stepdad
tier.
did.
And
My family literally thought that it was Antifa. Like literally thought
really,
that.
the
Yes.
Day of the Rope shirts not give them clues.
And my brother-in-law was there at the protest. I don't think he was inside the Capitol. I think he left by then, but he did go. So
And now I worry some of these individuals, like him, an older, conservative in his mid-50s who's fairly tame. He likes the hegemony, but he likes status quo, and he has a serious reverence for authority. So people flaunting authority, even if they were on his side, is something he would strongly consider unacceptable.
right.
So, but then he's going that hard right libertarian route. Well, it's all fucked. I don't want them to spend money on healthcare. I don't want them to spend money on the military. I just want them to leave me alone. Bah! And I'm like, damn it. We were making progress, dude.
Yeah, sometimes you're like, and you're gone.
Yeah, it
off.
just felt him streaming through my fingers. I'm like, no, we were pulling you around, Anyway,
Yeah.
I'm noticing your chat, Craig's. Yeah, they've come and picked up 2 people in Cincinnati already that were involved with it. And I think one of them actually was running a local political campaign, and she's not anymore.
Yeah, there's a lot of people from Tennessee. A lot of people from Tennessee.
Holy shit.
Have been arrested.
I wasn't going to talk to my chat too much, but history clarified. I was just thinking about you. I still owe you a collab, so I can complain about American Johnson, but history clarified can go off on me taking forever to get around to doing some kind of doing some kind of collab there. We wanted to talk about teachers, I think, and
Mm.
yeah. Make sure to subscribe, folks, in my chat if you haven't already. Just pop on over to Twitch to Soop_Poo, Soop Poop over on Twitch. Make sure to give her a subscribe or a follow. If you've got a subby, give her a subby. Make sure you look
Yeah.
after, but definitely give a follow and make sure that she is make sure she is your new favorite Twitch streamer, right? So. I don't know. Do you guys have any other
Yeah.
questions? I'm pretty much out of steam. I mean, I could still
I was
rant for
gonna
another 2 hours, but
right. I was gonna say it's close to your 90-minute mark. If I get 100 subs in 25 days, I'll buy a Soviet Union flag.
there you go.
So
Oh
that's
wow,
the
that's your
goal.
goal. Nice.
That's the goal.
I yeah, I have yet to do any kind of sub or push goal. But
Yeah.
you know, there's a few of you. I'm pretty sure there's a few of you who followed my channel. Hey, Louisa Ruth. And there's a few of you that I think there might be one or two patrons of mine in the chat here. So I have a teleprompter now, so that's fun. But
Really?
yeah. For my scripted videos, no
Mm.
more putting this phone on a winch and a damn crank claw and having to look at it in front of my webcam. And I've been able to get a camera and a teleprompter rig, so that's good.
Yeah, nice.
And hopefully, well, basically, I just say to close here. I am Carr on YouTube. I make black anarchist agitprop and political commentary. You can follow me there. You can subscribe on YouTube. You can follow me on Twitter at car_YZ. And you can follow me on Twitch at car_YZ. And I do have a Patreon as well, if you are so inclined. Soop, thank you for having me
No,
tonight.
thank you.
It's been a wonderful pleasure. Are you going to continue streaming when we are done here? I know it's late for you.
Yeah, I'll still be streaming.
All right. Well, I am going to duck out here. It has been a pleasure to all of my people watching on YouTube. Everybody, take care. Ike, hey, History Clarified subbed for you. Nice.
Thank you for this. Oh, thank you, History Clarified. I really appreciate that. 99 to go, y'all, and then I'll buy that flag.
Hey, check out History Clarified's channel as well. They do great media analysis and historical commentary and documentaries as well. Stan Ganome, she is streaming on Twitch. Everybody in my chat, look up Soop_Poo on Twitch. Go and follow and sub if you got it. Please and thank you. Ike Solis, thanks for stopping by. It's been fun. Everybody in your chat, Craig's Benedict. It's been cool talking to you. Ruby Hacks, it's been cool talking to you. I love your chat. You have wonderful people in your chat, okay? Everybody take
Thank
care.
you.
Car is out. All right.